criticism is the cost of praise. Lamar Jackson, I've given you your praise, so it's time to properly assess the criticism. Now, so many people have blamed the shortcomings of the Baltimore Ravens on their lack of threats at wide receiver. But remember, they used a first-round pick on speedster out of Oklahoma, Hollywood Brown, who was a stud in college. They used a third-round pick on, again, a beast tight end in Mark Andrews, who was also a stud in college. So many people are blaming the Ravens organization for not being able to properly recruit free agent signings. But what if wide receivers don't necessarily want to go play in Baltimore because they're not convinced that Lamar Jackson can get the job done? See, I think Lamar Jackson deserves a little bit more of the blame or questions about the success of the Baltimore Ravens than he's getting. Now, I'm not making a mistake. I'm not questioning the talent of Lamar Jackson overall, but what I am questioning is, can Lamar Jackson actually get it done come playoff time? Remember, Lamar Jackson threw no touchdown passes collectively in the 2 playoff games this year. Remember, Lamar Jackson only threw 1 touchdown pass in the playoffs last year. Remember, Lamar Jackson's passer rating is declining in the playoffs each of the last 3 seasons. What does Lamar Jackson do well? You better believe him and that offense are going to be able to run the ball. They've led the league in rushing yards the last 2 years. But the question that I've been asked is the same question that I will ask y'all. It's rhetorical, but it still rings true. Why drive when you can fly? The Baltimore Ravens, they're incredibly efficient at driving or running the ball, if you will. But come to playoffs, it's time to fly and fly high. You see it with the Tampa Bay Bucks this year, and you surely saw it with the Chiefs last year. Greg Jennings is back with us. Bucky, you up first, though. How much is Lamar Jackson to blame for the Ravens' playoff struggles?
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Look, he's played at the MVP level, but before we can even think about fully evaluating the quarterback, we have to say, who is he throwing to? Because when I look at the best young quarterbacks in this league, one common denominator stands out. They have veteran playmakers on the outside. When I think about the jump that Josh Allen made this year, man, it wasn't a coincidence that Stephon Diggs came over and really boosted that passing game. When I look at Patrick Mahomes and how he is throwing the ball all over the yard, playing at an MVP level and winning a Super Bowl, it certainly helps when you have Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. When I think about Justin Herbert really taking the league by storm, man, Keenan Allen is a true baller. And so when I think about what Lamar Jackson is playing with, I mean, let me see. If I was playing quarterback and I had my choose and I had an older Des Bryant, I had Willie Snead, I had Hollywood Brown, certainly I would raise my game because those playmakers are going to make the game easy for me. No. If we want to fully evaluate Lamar Jackson, we have to make sure they have a number 1 receiver in place before we do that evaluation. When the Baltimore Ravens get Lamar Jackson to number 1, then we will truly see if he's good enough to get them to that Super Bowl level.
I agree with both of you, and I'm gonna start with Acho. Acho, I'm gonna put a lot more blame than Bucky is on Lamar because he is the quarterback, and in the postseason, there is so much more pressure at that position for you to play at an elite level and to raise the play of the guys around you. Going to Bucky, your point. Now, they did spend first-round draft picks on talent. However, he does not have a true, and I'm not talking about tight end, I'm talking about a receiver, someone that can get out on the perimeter and can just break the game wide open. He doesn't have that. As great and as much speed as Hollywood Brown has, he drops the ball. He's not super reliable for a guy like Lamar Jackson. But when you look at Lamar Jackson, I can't just pass the buck to everybody around him. He has to be better. Acho, you mentioned something. When it comes to free agency, why aren't receivers flocking to go play with this MVP? It's because as a receiver, you want someone who you know without doubt is going to be able to get you the ball. I don't believe that any receiver in this league thinks that Lamar Jackson can't throw the ball, but they question, can he be consistent at throwing the ball accurately and efficiently? That's why you don't see guys flocking to the Ravens, wanting to play with this MVP all-star elite talent of an individual in Lamar Jackson.
Greg Jennings, you are a Super Bowl champion, several thousand-yard seasons, several contracts. You did it at the highest level for a long time. Is Greg Jennings without Aaron Rodgers?
Greg Jennings is not Greg Jennings without Aaron Rodgers. That doesn't mean that I wouldn't have been an effective player. Like, I was going to be effective. I truly believe that. However, as your quarterback goes, you go. Think about this. When I moved on and went to the Minnesota Vikings, it wasn't that I fell off. My play didn't just fall off. My quarterbacking fell off, though. And but I can't solely put that on my quarterback. Now, there was things that I could have done to possibly help a young Christian Ponder and a Teddy Bridgewater and a Matt Castle and in all the revolving door of quarterbacks that I started to have after I left the Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. But when you marry a great quarterback, and Bucky, you mentioned it, every quarterback you named has a true number one guy. Lamar Jackson does not have that. However, when you do not have a true number one guy, the pressure is now on you to make them work.
But that begs the question, and I'll come back to you, Bucky, here shortly, but it goes back to that chicken and egg conversation of what came first. See, what comes first, the true number one receiver or the quarterback making the receiver number one? I would probably submit, that Davante Adams wouldn't be Davante Adams without Aaron Rodgers. I know for certain Julian Edelman wouldn't be Julian Edelman without Tom Brady, nor Chris Hogan, nor Wes Welker, nor anybody else. All the quarterbacks, the great quarterbacks, they help make their receivers great receivers. Tyler Lockett, he had 15 catches, 200 yards in a game last year. Tyler Lockett, like the dude that's supposed to be a punt return and kick return specialist for the Seahawks, drafted in the 3rd round, DK Metcalf. The same DK that everybody slept on is now supposed to be one of the best receivers in the National Football League because the quarterback helps make the receiver great. So, Bucky, when you say you only put this much blame on Lamar, I just have to ask you, Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown, would he have been enough elsewhere? Mark Andrews, would they be doing more elsewhere? I'm just now starting to peer into Lamar Jackson and just ask the question, are some of your players not putting up the same statistics in part because of your shortcomings?
Well, look, there's some of that certainly comes into place. On a podcast, my podcast partner, Danny Jeremiah, likes to say it takes 3 Ps to get a young quarterback up and running to help him be great. Protection, playmakers, and play calling. So, look, their offensive line is solid, do a great job of running the football and all of that. Playmakers, I've pointed to. But one thing we never talk about when it comes to the Baltimore Ravens, their play calling. At some point, we have to shed the light on Greg Roman and say, is he the guy that can get Lamar Jackson to the next level? Because we saw this before. We saw it with Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick came to the league, was bang, like Haley's Comet, took off, was making all of these plays. But then over time, people began to catch up to that scheme. And so as I look at the Baltimore Ravens, in 2 years, Lamar Jackson has been phenomenal. They've won 31 games and only lost 7. He's played at an MVP level. But now, can Greg Roman evolve the scheme while still playing to Lamar Jackson's strengths to help them get to the next level? So in the postseason, yes, it's about players, but it's also about tactics.
But
it's about play callers.
Let's go here, Bucky. Let's go here, Greg, because this is a conversation I don't think has had enough on sports television. We all put it on Greg Roman, and I get that. Greg Roman, offensive coordinator, let's put it on him. But if you were to run a zone read type of offense with Tom Brady, your eyebrows would raise. So if you were to now run a drop back, throw the ball 50 times a game with Lamar Jackson, your eyebrows should equally raise. Greg Roman cultivates the offense to accentuate Lamar Jackson's skill set. That's what he does. Just like Patrick Mahomes, his offense is cultivated by Andy Reid to accentuate his skill set. So are we justly adequate? Are we justly distributing the proper channels of blame when, in fact, Bucky, I'm like, no, Greg Roman's had the top rushing offense the last 2 years. He also has the top rushing quarterback the game of football has ever seen and likely will ever see. So I don't know if I'm going to now sit back and say, you know what, Greg Roman, y'all need to pass the ball more. Because maybe what he's seeing is like, sure, we can pass the ball more, but then our rushing offense will be about 15th. Our passing offense will be about 15th, and we'll do nothing great. We'll just end up being ordinary.
Well,
for me, I think you have to put some of the blame, like Bucky said, on Greg Roman as a play caller. But only so much can go on him, because ultimately we're not in that locker room. We're not within those walls. And so we don't know if Lamar Jackson is saying, I want to throw the ball, keep me in the pocket. But everyone outside, all of us as spectators, we know what he can do. So does Greg Roman. So does everyone in that locker room. And everyone knows if you don't allow Lamar Jackson to use his legs, why is he going to be an elite talent? Is he going to be the same elite talent? So you play into what he does well, but you have to evolve, like you said, Bucky. I thought the Seattle Seahawks did a great job with Russell Wilson early in his career, not putting so much on his plate, allowing him to still run the ball, get outside the pocket, and have the option to pitch it, throw it, scheme up things that allowed him to perfect his throwing ability. And now we see what Russell Wilson is. Can Lamar Jackson take that next step? Well, he needs a play caller to believe in what he believes in when he sees him run that football the same way when he drops back to throw it.
Here's what we know. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens averaged 29 points per game in the regular season, only 13 points per game thus far with Lamar Jackson in the playoffs. Whether Greg Roman or Lamar Jackson, that's